This is a topic that some people have asked me to talk about a few times, a few different people. And this is something that I've been meaning to talk about for a while now. And I think it's very important to the topic of sociosexual dynamics. And the reason why is because most people are a certain level of sexually repressed. You know, with most women that you're going to approach, most of the women you're going to meet, especially in the society where sexuality is repressed and there's this Madonna whore complex that just permeates society. One thing to understand is the topic of toxicity, right? You know, a lot of people get confused when they see the word toxic pop up in social media in different contexts. And sometimes it seems like people are talking about sex. Sometimes people are talking about emotions. Sometimes people are talking about abuse. Sometimes people are talking about manipulation. But really what toxicity is just having the ability to affect someone's emotions without their permission. Toxicity is a range. Toxicity is a range and a spectrum that goes from moral toxicity to amoral toxicity to immoral toxicity to illegal toxicity, right? And we might just leave illegal off of there, but that'll probably go under, it'll morph with different aspects of immoral toxicity and some aspects of amoral toxicity at times, just based off of the way society creates certain laws. But moral toxicity is just basically having a way of speaking to someone's sexual shadow, creating that sexual desire and affecting someone's emotions. You know, one way of creating moral toxicity is just respecting someone's boundaries, like respecting a woman's boundaries. An example of this would be, let's say you're approaching a woman up front with your sexual intentions, and when that woman tries to shit test you and she tries to give you the impression that she's not interested in casual sex, if you just go ahead and bow out, like, all right, cool, if you're not interested, that's fine, right? You know, oh, I understand, that's good, I'm cool. And what that'll do is that'll trigger a woman's ego to feel as if, why is this man okay with not having sex with me? It'll give her the mindset of, maybe this man has so many options that when he presented me this opportunity, this is an opportunity that he presented not because he desires validation, but because he knows what to do with it. He's not asking to get some of this ass because he can't get ass anywhere else and he's just desperate. He's asking because he knows what to do with it. See, that's moral toxicity. Another aspect of that is just knowing how to speak to a woman's sexual shadow, knowing how to turn her on without her permission, right? That's moral toxicity, right? Another example of that is just a woman who is highly sexually receptive to you, right? Let's say it's a woman, like you see posts like that where a woman is like, I'm nutting me toxic, right? Now, yes, that can have its bad effects, if you have a baby with somebody you don't need to have a baby with. But at the same time, showing that level of receptivity, showing that level of desire, a high level of desire, it triggers something in someone's ego and their emotions that causes them to become a certain level of attached to you. Because often what causes the attachment is a certain emotional roller coaster. It's a quick change or quick shift in emotions from negative to positive, or usually it's from negative to positive, not always from neutral to positive, right? It's a quick change from one way to another, right? Amoral toxicity would be more so just reciprocating a woman's energy. So that would be, and that's also just respecting boundaries too. With amoral toxicity, it's like if a woman isn't reciprocating your energy, she's trying to be a manipulative time waster. All credit goes to Alan Roger Curry on that particular phrase. But a woman is just not giving you that energy in return, so you bow out. You stop responding. You start being inconsistent with her the same way that she's trying to waste your time and be inconsistent with you. And when that happens, it's going to trigger something within her ego to where she's probably going to throw the pussy at you. I've been in that position on multiple occasions with different women, and a lot of those women are women by which I initiated the situation before I developed my game, or maybe there were certain extenuating circumstances, like maybe they had a boyfriend or they were too far away for me to approach them up front sexually from the place of their shadow and then to expect a quick return on that. So I would just, I would be cool with, I would look to the woman's her personality and see if there are things we could talk about and have a regular conversation and just get to know her some and create that very subtle attachment emotionally to me through having those conversations, having those deep intellectual conversations. And then when I would get to the point where, okay, cool, I want to, initiate this into a sexual relationship, and I would try to flirt and speak to her sexual shadow in a way, she wouldn't be immediately receptive to it. So I would just stop talking to the woman completely, stop giving her any attention, because she would view me as a man who wanted to give her validation, right? And viewing me as a man who she would use for validation, it would cause her to be in a position where once she lost the main source of validation that she desired, like let's say there's a man in her life that she wanted to reach, but he was above her weight class as far as, you know, his value on paper. They're both having a value-based mindset, a value-based dating mindset, and because of that, his value on paper was higher than hers, and that's the reason why she was pursuing him. But when she saw a lack of reciprocation of that pursuing, she gets to the place where her ego would be low, and then she would come back around to me, right? Another aspect of toxicity would be immoral toxicity, right? So immoral toxicity would more so be a matter of being in a situation with a woman where you are lying to her. You know, that's a lot of what I would consider super simps or pimps. That would be more so like dirty macking, or lying to a woman, or giving the impression you want more than sex in order to get her to have sex with you, right? When you do that type of thing, I see that as immoral toxicity, or just flat out lying to a woman, telling her things that aren't true in order to create that emotional attachment, in order to create that certain effect within her ego and within her emotions, that quick change in emotions that would cause her to desire you based off of an ego type of level, right? That's immoral toxicity, right? And then illegal toxicity. Another aspect of immoral toxicity would be just being manipulative, being emotionally or mentally or physically abusive, because these type of things, it can trigger a Stockholm syndrome in a person. Let's say a person was, let's say they were molested, or let's say that the person was mistreated as a child, abused. And by mistreating and abusing that person in certain ways, you remind them of their parental figure. And by reminding of their parental figure, it puts you in a position of dominance or authority in their mind. And if you are able to give them moments, those rare moments of making them feel good about themselves, after putting yourself in a position of authority within their minds, then it causes them to feel like you're a person who has the ability to validate them, right? So that's immoral toxicity, right? Illegal toxicity would go in line with, coercion. It would go in line with forcing yourself on somebody, because a lot of women, a woman may be in a position where she's masculine within her energy, right? So she never allows the men that she sleeps with to fully step into the dominance of their masculine energy, because she's trying to leverage sexuality. So this is something that's messed up that happens, and this is the reason why I say it's illegal and immoral toxicity. There are some women out there who have their first orgasm when they're being raped, because this is the first time a man has been able to enact having a certain level of sexual dominance with her. And by him enacting that certain level of sexual dominance, by him taking that into his own hands, by giving her a level of plausible deniability, which is actual deniability because she didn't consent to the sex itself, it puts her in a situation where she is able to let herself go because it wasn't her decision, right? And this is why there are certain instances where a woman's first orgasm will be with somebody who's raping her, right? So this would be illegal toxicity. So I think each man, every person should learn how to be a certain level of toxic, right? Because in this day and age, there's way too much stimuli. There's way too much stimuli. There's internet porn. There's people's friends giving them stories and instances of times where they had very emotionally overwhelming sexual experiences, that if your sexual experiences and your mindset about it is bland, that even if you're a good person on paper, or you're a good partner on paper, and you do all the things that society tells you that you need to do in order to create a strong bond and connection with an individual, that if you do not have the ability to affect their emotions without their permission, that when they're not around you, they're not going to think about you. They're going to be out of sight, out of mind. And when they're out of sight, out of mind, it's going to give another person who has the ability to speak to the sexual shadow to have more power over them than you, even if you're a person who is doing everything right according to the standards that society sets about how you need to go about relationships. So when I talk about toxicity, I don't believe any man should really date a woman seriously unless he has the ability to fuck her into her feelings. Unless a man has toxic dick, unless a man has devil dick. Unless he has that, then I don't think you should really be taking that woman too seriously in terms of a relationship. You're not that sexually compatible, and that's fine. And there's different ways to mend that. There's different ways to fix that on the back end. But like a wise man once told me, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But sometimes when you're on the back end of a situation where you allowed a woman's social programming to be what govern the way that you would operate with that woman, you watch your words, you're always trying to be so polite, you're always trying to be so politically correct with that woman, then what'll often happen is, she is going to get bored with you. She's not going to fuck with you like that. So by having a certain level of toxicity, you get to speak to the sexual shadow of an individual. And by speaking to the sexual shadow of an individual, you give yourself the ability to be someone who speaks to that. And by being a man who can speak to a woman's sexual shadow, but by also having discipline, by also being a man who's emotionally intelligent and who understands integration, who's integrated himself, you'll have the ability to integrate that woman, open her up sexually, and integrate her into a relationship that is sexually fulfilling. So when I talk about toxicity, this is what I mean. Men, we need to understand this. Women also need to understand this. Oftentimes by not understanding toxicity, people put themselves in a situation where you're going to be spending all this time investing in an individual without ever getting to the point where they feel something about you that causes them to see the value in you, right? They need to feel that. It's not just about logic and saying that somebody's a good person for you on paper. It's also about them feeling that. So like, let's say it's a woman and she's in a position with a man where, let's say, now this can backfire for women. That's why I advocate for men learning toxicity. That's why I advocate for the biology first approach. Because the reason I say this is because one aspect of toxicity a woman may use is a woman may give the impression that she's not that sexual. And if a woman is integrated sexually, she may give the impression that she's not that sexual in order to get a man emotionally invested in her. And if her internalized definitions of masculinity allow her to still be attracted to a man who shows a certain level of emotion, then what that woman may do is give a man the impression that she's not that sexual. And then after that man invests in her enough to show that he would stick around after sex, what that woman will do is that woman will turn on the sexual toxicity, right? And then she will become hypersexual out of nowhere with that man. And that will trigger something in his emotions where he went previously from feeling that he wasn't sexually desired to now he feels like he's highly sexually desired. And that quick shift and that approach, that quick shift and the way that woman saw and viewed that man will put him in a position where now he will become emotionally attached to her. And this is something that a lot of women use. It's actually a good strategy, but oftentimes this will backfire because if the woman isn't integrated, when the man starts showing more emotional investment because of the sexual toxicity, it will cause him to show a lack of emotional discipline, and he will begin to invest too much in that woman too soon, and then she will lose attraction for him, she will lose respect for him, and she will feel like she's the one who's controlling the situation. And a woman may feel like she wants to control the situation, but like I always say, a smart woman is a woman who knows how to be dumb for the right man. A smart woman is a woman who knows how to be stupid for the right man, who uses her feminine intuition and her feminine energy in order to look at a man and understand his energy, to understand the way he thinks, to understand his program, and to say whether or not this is a man who she would be willing to follow. And if the answer is no, then she shouldn't deal with that man. But a woman should also not deal with the man who she doesn't see herself having a pure sexual desire for him, because that will lead to situations that end up in irreconcilable differences. So this is just Brody's take on what toxicity is. People need to understand this. That's the reason why people get, confused at the terms of toxicity. And because of social programming, many good men, many men who would be nice guys on paper, they don't understand toxicity. So they will try to avoid putting themselves in situations where they will speak to a woman's shadow, because they motivate themselves to gain more money, more looks, money, and status, thinking that by doing that they will gain more sexual access to women. So they want to avoid being toxic because it will keep them from being able to motivate themselves to reach their goals. And I think that the goal of this and the purpose of this all around the board is that each person needs to understand a certain level of intrinsic desire, intrinsic motivation, intrinsic reward. So a man should learn how to reach his goals on his own. A man should learn that for himself he wants to do the things that are going to benefit his lifestyle, regardless of a woman is a part of that lifestyle or not. And a man should still understand sexual toxicity. A man still needs to understand how to speak to a woman's sexual shadow and to turn her on to get that pussy wet, so that regardless of how much money he has, he'll still be able to cause that desire within her, right? So this is just Brody's take on what toxicity is. If you have some thoughts on it, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. And let's have this discussion. Let's do this.